Time flies.
It does fly, and I so well remember when I knew you as a very young pianist, and when I listened to you first, and I knew that you had a great future, and to see that you are doing so well, especially you have played much in this country also with several orchestras. But in Europe, I know that you have been recognized as a truly great performer, and I really wish for you to be given more chances to be heard in this country, because with the talent you have, you deserve it. And I'm really, as one who knew you when you were a young boy, and when I say to Leo Fuller, because if I remember where you were working at Six,
That's right.
and Leo Fuller was such a dear friend, dear old friend. Talk about you. He said, I have somebody working. He had so many people working in the store, but everyone talks that every time he has a chance to play piano somewhere in the piano department, it's amazing. So I said, I want to hear him certainly, and that's how we start to become friends. So it's a long friendship. That's why I'm so delighted to be interviewed by you.
I was very happy to tell Francis Poulenc in Paris that I would have had no career. Certainly it would have been quite different without your encouragement in those early days.
When one has a talent, there is always one moment in life where those who really deserve it get a real break. So don't say that it's because you have the talent.
But speaking of Poulenc, I'm reminded that you were very closely associated with these historical French musicians we call les Six, Poulenc, Honegger, Milot,
Auric, Duré, and
yes.
Germain Taillefer. Certainly I was really called the official conductor of the group des Six. You know, I premiered so many works of them, of Poulenc, of Satie also, who was the spiritual chef of the group, I may say, with Jean Cocteau, who also had so much influence on all that was going artistically at that time in Paris. So when you talk about the Six, it's one of the things I'm really proud that when I perform the music, really, sometimes we had scandals, you know, and they were not recognized for the talent they had. And I could tell many things about some of the premieres I gave of Milo and other one of the group. And at that time, the reputation was just young, promising musicians. I must say that it's a joy to see that practically all of them became famous, really great and famous.
In addition to being such a great artist himself, wasn't Satie a great eccentric?
Oh, he was fantastic. He had a sense of humor, which I knew him very, very well. And it's too long a story, but he was part of the luck that gave him my first chance. It would be too long a story to tell today, but I knew him very well. Auric, I knew, well, there was a difference of few years between us, and we became great friends, and I met Satie and Auric became very fond of our household. You know, my parents came from Russia, were married in Paris, and never returned to Russia. But at 5 o'clock they had the traditional Russian tea, which Auric and Satie enjoyed, and they became a little part of the family. So at one time in my life, I saw Auric and Satie 3 or 4 times. I performed so many works beforehand with Satie himself, with Auric. Those were really the great heroic times, and now Satie, which for a while was in the shadow, is recognized as such an important composer, because if you know really some of the music he wrote, he was a kind of precursor. Or I don't want to hear one story that many people may know but about Satie. He was a great friend of Debussy, who admired him very much, so did Ravel. And the best proof of that is in his Gymnopédie, of which there are two we play, which were orchestrated by no less than Debussy. And so Debussy was one of the only people who saw often, regularly, Debussy. And when La Mer, the sea, was performed for the first time, You know, the first movement is from dawn to noon. And certainly Satie went to the rehearsal and went to the premiere and had lunch with Debussy, and Debussy was waiting for the opinion of Satie, and Satie said, yes, it's a very beautiful work, but you know, in the first movement from dawn to noon, around 11:45, what the clarinet does is really amazingly beautiful. That's the kind of thing he could say. Boy, did I go out with him, and our promenade in Paris, he could say. He was very funny. He was a great humorist. Oh, I could tell you that it's a shame that his literature, which is not enormous, but whatever he wrote was so funny, I could tell you for hours about. But I think the time is too short for that.
Oh, I think we can take the time. Wasn't it Stravinsky who said that Satie was poor by conviction, I believe? He found him sleeping on hot water, on bottles filled with water or something in a hammock.
Well, the life of Satie was very... Nobody ever visited him until the day of his funeral. He lived in Arcueil-Cachan, which is quite a number of miles from Paris, and quite often it was too late to have any way of transportation. It was out of question. He was too poor to take a cab, a taxi, and he would walk miles. And it was found out after that he was so good to all the children around him, bringing them sweets and toys, in spite of being really a poor man, but nobody could ever guess if he was poor or rich. He had such dignity and such a sense of humor and such genius, because there are certain works which are not very well known. The first one, in which Debussy and Ravel found an harmonic material which really was part of the development of contemporary music. And one, I saw Parade, Relâche, I was present, and I conducted so many of his works. Première, one of the most funny things he did, I was conducting a spectacle, there was Jean Radiguet, Le Piège de Méduse, and singing by some of the Six. And Satie said, I want to write something for the intermission. Musique d'ameublement. Ameublement means furniture. It's a furniture music. I said, why the title? He said, most of the time people, first of all, don't listen much to music. And they talk. So I want to write something for intermission. They can talk as much as they want, play the way you want, forte, piano. That's use your own judgment. Musique d'ameublement. So I gave the premiere. I wonder if that has ever been published, because I never heard anymore of that furniture music, but the idea was so funny.
I have never seen a score to that.
No.
Excuse me.
No, go ahead.
Would you please tell us about one of the scandales that attended several of your premiere performances?
One was when I gave in Paris. I'd really given the premiere of 5 study for piano and orchestra with Darius Milhaud in Brussels. I gave the premiere at my own concert in Paris, and the group of the Six had its enthusiastic followers, but also there was a group which was against the group, and they came en masse ready to boo Milhaud, good or bad. So with Marcel Meyer, we start the Etude, first time, premiere in Paris. After 2 bars, boo, and the people who want to listen to say, shut up, I want to listen to make a long story short, really. The noise was such that nobody could hear one note. I didn't move a muscle, but the poor pianist Marcel Meyer became green. But we went right to the end, and then I turned to the public. By that time, the ushers, the doorman, listened, that didn't know what was happening, and they called few policemen, few cops, and we had half of a dozen of fellows who I guess never heard any kind of music. And I turned to the public. I said, it's wonderful to have a public so young and so enthusiastic that You can really fight even for music. It's wonderful. If you like it, sure you like it. If you don't like it, you can do as much as you want. But the first thing you have to do is to listen to the music and not judge it without knowing what it's all about. Therefore, now I ask for your complete silence, and we are going to start from the beginning, the 5:30. That time, the public was dead silent, and at the end, everything started again. The bravos, the boos, and I think there was some fight. The cops had to separate some of the prize fighters, and that's the story.
Maestro, you were also a very close friend of Maurice Ravel.
Just to have known him is one of the greatest things in my life, because the great man had no vanity. Certainly he must have had pride because he knew how great he was. But he was so simple, so nice, and he didn't want to conduct an orchestra. He was no conductor, and many, many times when he was asked to conduct, he said no, ask Golschmann. So it was so sweet. And not only that, he loved nightlife. And I spent really long evenings, which went sometime until dawn, walking with him. And the conversation of Ravel, you may imagine, is something he had in mind. He lived a very simple life. He had a house in Montfort-l'Amaury, a charming place about 50 miles from Paris. And there is in some book a photograph of a lunch he gave us with all the six, and few friends were about 8, and I wish I had it, but it just happened. Yesterday at a party that the Johnson gave, a wonderful party where I saw so many friends, and they invited also the old-timer of the symphony, and Oscar Johnson showed me a photograph which I never saw before, which he took years ago when Prokofiev was here. So on that photograph, which is already packed, I cannot show it to you, you see Tansman, my wife, myself, watching, listening to Prokofiev playing the piano, because Prokofiev was here, and he also was a great friend.
Thank you for being our guest, Maestro.
Well, don't thank me. It's a pleasure to have seen you again, and I hope I'll see you in Europe very soon, and I wish you the greatest of success, my friend.